So today we're going to be attempting to mix Revit with a Let's Play style. So I'm going to be using Autodesk Revit LT 2023, which means if you've used standard Revit 2022 or Revit 2023 recently, you're going to notice that a few of the different tabs that will be up at the top are going to be missing. And that's because I pay for the light version, and it has all the things that I need. One major disadvantage is it doesn't have the plugins. So if you're used to using Revit plugins or the massing in place tools, you're probably not going to see that much on these, and I don't expect to be buying the full version of Revit anytime soon. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of get started. I've started the residential template. I will try to make it be a realistic building. I'm not going to just have it be just unclosed shapes and unsupported units, because I do want the users that are looking at this to be able to replicate the techniques and the tools that I'm using in here in their own daily processes. But I am not going to be making anything specific as of right now. Maybe in a year or two we could come in here and build the Hagia Sophia or something in here. I could take requests for certain rooms that people are wanting to do in their project, and we could kind of mock up based off of suggestions that way. But as of today, I'm just going to kind of go ahead and get started just so you could see how I work in the software. The first thing I do when I am opening up a project, once I've picked the template that I want, is I'm going to want to go into the File, Save As options, and then I'm going to want to save this so that I can begin making the file. One of the things that has really helped my level of organization as a drafter is coming up with a proper naming system. Personally, I work with a few different designers and a few different companies. So although there is times where I am working by myself and I might want to name my file something like Tuesday and then followed by the date. So today is going to be 10/01/22, and then followed by the project name. So I'm just going to call it Let's Play 1. And so if I am doing work directly with a client, I might call it Tuesday after my own business. But if I'm doing work with another designer, to say Design Studio 1, I might name it like this and then properly make sure to put it in a folder organization that follows that as well. The first step after opening the template is you're going to want to save your file. I also recommend, if you see in my file name, there's a date system. And the reason I do that is because every day that I open up a client's project, I am going to save it with a new date. So if I was to work on this tomorrow, this file would be called DS1_1002. Then the second step I'm going to do, especially if I have any information about the building, even just how the building is built, is I'm going to want to get into one of these exterior elevations, because we're going to want to set our datum levels. I'm going to activate one of these exterior elevations on the outside here, which you can also activate inside of your project browser. If you go to your project browser and you go under elevations, a building elevation, which is synonymous with exterior elevations, you can essentially open up any of these. I'm going to look at this and I'm going to decide, do these accurately represent what I'm going to build? And I don't even necessarily mean the height. When I say try to get your elevations to be as accurate as you can, I am not looking at these numbers at all. I am talking about the existence of these elevations. So your building probably has a first floor. Your building probably has a foundation. And then you're going to have to look at these others to decide. So fundamental ones your building is probably going to have is going to be your first floor, your foundation, and your roof. Your building, of course, is going to have a top and bottom of footing, but in school and even in a lot of situations in real life, I don't always find myself having to put those in, especially when I work with designers, because they're more just needing to know what the levels of things are. The basement level is going to hold some finishes on it. The first floor is going to have some levels, is going to have some items on it. The second floor can have items on it. And then there's going to be elements on the second floor in terms of design that are going to want to refer to the roof level. But unless you're working with architects, which I do, and they ask these types of items, you're probably not going to have those either. So the real things you're asking yourself at the beginning here is, do I have a second floor? And do I have a basement? If you don't have one of these, so for the purpose of this, I'm just going to say... Actually, no, I want to leave this building as complex as possible, but just for example, I could say, oh, I don't have a second floor. So you can click on this level and literally delete it. If you press delete, you're going to get an angry pop-up with a bunch of different stuff, and all this is telling you is all the stuff over here in your project browser that relates to the second level, like your second floor ceiling plan and your second floor framing plan and electrical plan and such, they're going to be deleted. Well, if your project doesn't have a second floor, then these things don't matter. So I am implying here, I like to kind of throw these into, because yes, I could do simple math, I could do simple addition and subtraction, but when I have 30 other things going on in my mind, it's nice to have them kind of do the math for me. So in one of these elevations, I'll typically go in to the dimension tool, and then I clicked on all these lines and then clicked in the blank space for my last click, because that's how you end the dimension tool. So now I have done the dimensioning, and I can see that I'm implying that my first floor is a 9 foot to the second floor, not necessarily ceiling height, because these levels are to the top of the floor system. So I'm more implying an 8-foot ceiling height with this. And we'll see that. That'll make a lot more sense when we start getting some actual mass into this. Okay, so I have decided that I like the floors and levels that they've got going on for us. I don't know if these numbers are correct, but that's the good thing about Revit. When you're placing, if you want a roof level, or if I was to even have a third floor in here, I wouldn't have to have the pressure of knowing that I placed it correctly at the beginning. I don't have to have that pressure of thinking, oh my gosh, I just copied this up and made my third floor be 4 foot above the second floor. That's a catastrophe. There's always a way in Revit to either click on the item and change its properties that are inherently built into it, or select items and refer to temporary or standard dimensions and tell the items to adjust themselves later. So I just find it a lot easier to get walls and such on paper. This is very counterintuitive for those of you who are hand drafters, but you just got to get all of the walls and all the information onto the paper and then reference them against each other and then adjust them. That's, again, my style. That may not be your style. If you want to do it more exactly, I'll eventually cover how to draft using location lines properly. But that's not how I'm going to cover it today, because that's not my favorite way to draft. What should I start with? Should I start with my floor? Should I start with my walls? Should I start with any other types of layout items? There's a lot of flexibility in Revit in terms of how you want to start a project. So the first thing I start with is walls. So if I start just the top wall tool, I'm not going to do the drop down. I'm not working in any of these weird structural walls, in-place walls, and we're not going to even go over sweeps and reveals until later. So I'm just going to start the standard wall tool, and I'm going to go into the type selector. I hate these generic walls. I don't like the generic floors. I don't like the generic walls. I don't like the generic roofs. I don't like the generic ceilings. I don't even like the furniture when it looks too generic. Because the problem with these is when you opened up the building information modeler, you went and chose one of the few things in the program that doesn't really carry information. Let me show you what I mean by that. get some generic stuff in. Yeah, you could say my walls are going to be 24 feet based on exterior location.